Industrial Security Podcast with Andrew Ginter and Nate Nelson. Sponsored by Waterfall Security Solutions.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Industrial Security Podcast. My name is Nate Nelson. I'm here with Andrew Ginter, the Vice President of Industrial Security at Waterfall Security Solutions. Andrew is going to introduce the guest and the subject of today's show. Andrew, how are you?
I'm okay, Nate. My listeners may detect I'm getting over a cold, so my apologies for my voice quality.
A cold, to say the least.
Yeah, it's been with me for a few weeks. So, our guest today is Robert Pitcher. Robert is the Manager of Cyber Partnerships within the Critical Infrastructure Directorate at Public Safety Canada. He's going to be talking to us about Canadian initiatives for industrial cybersecurity in his directorate. So, Robert, thank you for joining us. Can we start with who is Public Safety Canada? What's the big picture that you folks fit into?
Andrew, it's a pleasure to be here. Certainly, we can start with that. You know, if you go to a high level and keeping it simple, public safety's mandate is to basically keep Canadians safe from harm. So this comes in a number of formats. Again, the threat landscape is certainly large. We look at a lot of things such as natural disaster, terrorism, crime. All of it falls into our arcs of fire. But, it goes without saying that you can't talk about any of these threats without talking about the need for cybersecurity. We have a number of responsibilities. First and foremost, we aid the members of the critical infrastructure with, now I say some of their cybersecurity needs. I say some because I think a lot of people don't realize how diverse the landscape is from a cyber point of view, but responsibility for managing cybersecurity, it falls to a number of organizations and departments within the federal government. And I can't really talk about cybersecurity in the federal government without mentioning our friends at the Communications Security Establishment, CSE for short, who stood up last year, I guess it was 2018, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. Again, this is supposed to be a one-stop shop for cybersecurity needs within the government of Canada. And this is also complemented by the National Cybercrime Coordination Centre, NC3 for short. This was stood up recently by the RCMP, again, to be a centralized place for reporting cybercrime. Now, those are probably two of the bigger players in the game right now. With public safety, my organization offering a number of services such as the ones that my team provides. Again, I speak of the larger organizations, but we also have a number of departments that lead initiatives in the other sectors. For example, NR10 is the lead for the electricity sector. We are the lead on the safety sector. Transport is lead, you guessed it, on the transportation sector. There are, of course, a number of others. I think the takeaway here should be that the responsibility for cybersecurity relies with a number of government-based agencies.
And you are with the Critical Infrastructure Directorate. Can you talk about the Directorate? What's your mandate there?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, the overall mandate of public safety, keeping Canadians safe and secure. Within that umbrella, there are a number of areas that help deliver on that mandate. I work in the National and Cybersecurity branch, and within that is the directorate called Critical Infrastructure. Again, our mandate is to enhance the resiliency of the critical infrastructure, and we do that through a number of programs. I could probably drone on about a lot of services we provide, but if I look at the specific area you want to talk about today, it's the cybersecurity programs that we deliver within the need to enhance the resilience of the critical infrastructure.
So you use the word resiliency. Do you folks, how do you define resiliency? Can you talk about that for a second? What's that all involve?
There's probably different ways to define resiliency for sure. If I was to take a crack at it, I would say it's just ensuring that the systems that we help support and the organizations that we support are able to survive some of the threats that we face on a daily basis.
So Nate, this seems like there's a lot of departments involved, and this is actually very similar to what we saw in the Department of Homeland Security in the United States a few years ago. There was a lot of different pieces of the puzzle in different places. They recently reorganized, put, I think, pretty much everything cybersecurity-wise under CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Should everything be in one place, or should it be spread out in the places that know certain things best, or that serve particular verticals? Because to say one size fits all doesn't really fit. I don't know. What we see in Canada looks like lots of different people contributing, one piece or another, and what we see in other parts of the world is consolidation. So, we'll have to see how it continues going forward. But for now, Robert's been explaining the Canadian situation. So I guess the next step deeper is your programs. Can you talk about your programs in more detail?
Absolutely. So again, I think, or maybe not, many of your stakeholders may recall the Canadian Cyber Incident Response Center, or CSIRC for short. Now, initially, this was public safety's main outlet to service the cyber needs of the critical infrastructure, but we primarily provided event coordination during events. Now, behind this organization, we built, I will call it, a robust unit of operational and policy-based programs to support the need of the federal and then later our national partners. Now, this is the operational role of CSIRC. Later became absorbed by the new Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity under CSC. So what's remained here underneath the public safety flag was the policy area and the programs area. Now, as I mentioned before, my concentration is on the programs area. And of course, we have an ever-growing ICS program here as well. Now, if I had to group, I would say we've got a number of things going on, but I would say we've got probably four main areas that I could talk to you about today. First one would be the ongoing technical awareness sessions that we do. We also have recently stood up an increasingly popular ICS webinar series. We've got, like many other organizations, a community sharing portal as well. And last, but certainly not least, is our annual Cybersecurity Symposium.
So you've listed four areas, four kinds of programs that you have. The first one you said was awareness. Yet, I would have thought that the Cyber Symposium and the webinars are part of awareness, but you've listed it separately. Can you talk about what is awareness as separate from these other programs?
Again, I think it's maybe it's just how we define what an awareness program is. So we like to call it the technical awareness session. It's basically something that we hold annually between 4 or 5 times across the country. And the objective of these sessions is to provide, it's a one-day session, and we normally do 2 in succession. And the idea is that we go over the basics of what it means to operate in the cybersecurity industrial space. So some of the things we cover, we review recent attacks. We expose participants to a number of tools and techniques. We primarily focus on the open source stuff. Again, to basically better defend their systems. We expose people to various platforms such as Kali and Metasploit, the powers of those tools. And we combine just a lot of hands-on opportunities to apply in practice, so in a classroom with your own dedicated computer, what the participants are exposed to. Again, the end goal here is to show, now I'll call them students, but we can call them participants, as to what they may face in their daily operations. And in general, I guess, is to raise their level of cybersecurity awareness in the industrial cyberspace. Now, we deliver these sessions with the help of our in-house technical laboratory resources. And we've got a number of specific ICS components. We've got PLCs and HMIs and other various components. And we also deliver this content. It's a pretty unique partnership. So we use our own instructors and experts in-house, but we also use some volunteers from the community as well. And it's a great area where public and private sector come together for the common good. Andrew, if you've ever taken any professional cybersecurity training, this is the same thing. The exception here is that we do this for free. Basically, all you have to do is get there. Now, the only requirement, we say, if you want to participate in the training, is you need to be a member of the critical infrastructure in some way. That can certainly be a diverse requirement. But again, that's our objective is to train Canadians to better secure their system. Our ideal target market here is probably the owners and operators, or the people who are charged with running the systems that allow our nation to focus. If that makes sense.
Briefly, Andrew, Robert mentioned a couple of names, Kali, Metasploit. Could you tell me what those are?
Sure. Kali Linux is a Linux distro, a distribution. It's like a CD image, or you can boot from a USB stick. You boot into Linux, and it's got a lot of tools for penetration testing. It's a penetration testing toolkit, open source. You can download it for free. The thing is constantly updated, so you kind of almost always want to download the very latest bit with all the latest exploits in it. Metasploit is one of the tools, an open source tool that is in the Kali Linux distribution, or you can get it, sort of standalone in lots of other places. It is a sophisticated, what's the right word, framework for penetration testing. I took training on Metasploit. Actually, I took I took it from the DHS. I took it from Canada Public Safety, and you select your target. You select the exploit you would like to see if the target can be compromised using vulnerability number 75, and then if it can be compromised and it's a remote code execution exploit, it says, well, which code would you like to run? What would you like to do to this target? It's depressing how easy it is to use. I mean, it does take a little getting used to, but once you're used to it, it's just nasty. And the clear impression that I have is that this is nothing compared to what the pros are using when they're coming against us. So that's the long story. It's they're two tools in the penetration tester's toolbox.
My other question about what you just discussed with Robert is that you guys were talking about awareness, yet it sounded like he was sort of describing a training program. What's the deal with that?
I had that conversation on the side with Robert. His division, Public Safety Canada and the Critical Infrastructure Directorate, they do not have a mandate to do training. So if they had a mandate to do training, they'd ask, what kind of training does the community need? Let's put together 75 training programs and offer them all, in competition with, post-secondary institutions. This is not their job. What he explained is that their job is raising awareness of the problem and of some of the tools that are available and some of the solutions that are available. And the way they've decided to do this is to offer one, or maybe it's two different courses. I think they're either 4 hours or 8 hours long, and you learn how to use these very powerful tools. And the clear message, clear impression I came away with from attending one of these was, oh shoot. And that you come away with a much deeper understanding of what's possible and of the imperative to put some really robust protections in place against this. So it is training, but it's not that they have a mandate to produce lots and lots of training. It's training in order to raise awareness so that people start taking steps towards a solution. And if I may, I am not an owner and an operator, and yet I was allowed to take the training. In fact, at the Department of Homeland Security, I'm not an American citizen, yet I was allowed to take their training. Both of these programs are open to a wider community than just critical infrastructure owners and operators. There's an application process you go through. Give them your reasons for wanting to attend, and if they can find an opportunity for you to attend, they will. They will prioritize owners and operators, but they have more capacity than just owners and operators. So, for example, with Public Safety Canada, I said, look, I am trying to put together course content for a post-secondary program. This was a graduate course at Michigan Technological University. I was using that course content to produce my second book, a book that's now available and lots of people in Canada are using. And so I asked, can I attend your training and see your approach to it and compare that with what I was thinking and just, get some ideas? And they said, yeah. And they found an opportunity where I could attend. And, they had a spare slot in one of their programs and they slotted me in. So if you want this opportunity for awareness and training, apply. And, they have their priorities, but, mere mortals like me can get in. And I suggest other listeners as well. So number 2 on your list was webinars. Can you talk about the webinars and how have they been received?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I won't spend too much time on this because, again, I think all your people have been exposed to a webinar before. again, so we work closely with the community at times, and what we find is there's basically a great wealth of knowledge that we want to make accessible to as many people as we can. We started hosting these, I think, early last year. And they were so successful. Starting this fall, we decided to make it a full-time program. Now, I know you were one of our first guests. We've only continued to build on that success as we move forward. Overall, these are very well received. And what we're trying to not be is just another webinar. For that reason, we vet the webinars or the webinar opportunities that come across to us through our ICS Advisory Committee. And again, we have a pretty formalized submission and review process where we make sure we select the most relevant target or topic based on the community need. Overall, I'm very happy with this offering, and they've been, for the most part, very well received.
Okay, Andrew, you were one of their first guests. Tell me what the webinar was like.
Well, the webinar was technically limited to, I think, 120 or 160 participants, and they basically sold out. They had more people registered than they could accommodate. So there's enormous interest. And another way that I gauge the interest in terms of the audience is at the end of the session, are there any questions? And the questions and the question and answer period just went on until we ran out of time, and I think we may even went over 5 or 10 minutes. So again, there's an indication that there's enormous interest. And, they've been coming out with another webinar every couple of months or, certainly one a quarter since. And they've all been, high quality speakers to their credit. And to my knowledge, have all been, completely subscribed. So if you want to participate in one of these things, you gotta sign up early. I'll mention details on the end, but basically these folks have only one mailing list, and it is the Symposium announcement mailing list. So if you want to get announcements of the webinars, you've got to get on their Symposium announcement mailing list, and there's information on the webpage. You send them email and ask to be added to the list. It's not a button you press. And you've got a portal. How does one get access to the portal, and what kind of information is available there?
Absolutely. I think it's like any other organization. We have a community portal for vetted members. To get access, the easiest way is to probably get in touch with myself or our team. Again, the easiest way to find us is if you Google public safety and ICS, you'll find the entry page into the team. So that's probably the best way to get access to it. In the end, what we really wanted was a place to store the annual content from the symposium, webinar sessions, basically any events related to the community. Some of these features are focused with the main list being, again, a place to store information so that people who are unable to attend any of our events can still access the material. But again, I think you'll probably agree, it's always good to read a PowerPoint. What we really want to push is for people to show up and attend these sessions that we hold literally across the country every year, because it's certainly more engaging and impression building to take in these events in person. But again, in a pinch, it's a great resource. But again, work is ongoing in this domain as well.
And your fourth topic was the Cybersecurity Symposium. How's that going going forward? What is the symposium, and what's the future of it look like?
I know we're leaving it last on the list, but it's certainly not the least important. I think I would call this probably our flagship program right now. And you folks have always been a big supporter for it. I think as long as at least I've been involved in running them. But you mentioned they've been happening for a while. We actually started these back in 2009. I kind of like to call this version 1.0. In its earliest form, it was just a gathering, 40 or so professionals who basically had an interest in ICS security. I wasn't part of it back then, but I've since been working over the past number of years to try and increase what we bring to the community here in Canada. I like to say it's a pretty slick offering right now, and I would agree it kind of rivals what you would actually have to pay a considerable amount of money to attend elsewhere. The symposium, it's a similar model to what people are more than likely familiar with. It's 2 full days of lectures. We've got multiple streams, discussions, demos, Panel discussions, always my personal favorite. And the standard draws. In addition to the actual lecture-based series, we normally bookend 2 days of the technical awareness sessions I spoke about earlier. So the form that you're probably familiar with now, I would call this 2.0 because it's a good example of how it's evolved over the years. For this year, I like to say we're moving into 3.0. We actually have a full week reserved for Toronto 2020. We're still going to have the lectures. We're still going to have the awareness sessions. But for this event, we're going to be offering something we call the ICS Forum for Management. Now, this is something new this year. The idea being the development of a more senior level focused sessions that are designed to, again, raise awareness of the importance and the complexity of securing the industrial control space as it relates to cyber. If we successfully trial and deploy this for Toronto, the idea is we're going to add this offering to the more frequently deployed training and awareness sessions, and then we're going to offer this as we move around the country when we offer this program. So what we did a couple of years ago, we stood back and we said, where strategically do we want to see this fall in the sometimes sea of cybersecurity conferences we see happen across each calendar year. I like the end of May because there wasn't a whole lot of competition at that time. Just after, right around spring, just before summer. So what we started to do strategically is move the offerings closer into the May timeframe. We started to have it in October, and then I think we had one in February, and then we finally ended up in March. Now, the idea here is that people can plan annually to normally in the last week of May, hopefully travel and attend the ICS Symposium.
One of the observations I wanted to make as someone who's attended a lot of the DHS, ICS, JWG events and the as many as I could manage of the Public Safety Canada Symposia as well, and it's an observation on attendance. The United States has roughly 10 times the population of Canada. At the ICS JWG events, they occur now twice a year, and I think if they're lucky, they get 400 people. It might have been 300 at the last event, but it happens twice a year. So do the numbers. Let's say it's 400 twice a year. In the most generous world, it's 800 people attend per year these events. In Canada, with 1/10 the population, it was 200 people at the last event, and I think they're targeting 300 people at this event. So it seems that per capita, there is quite a bit more interest in this topic in Canada than in the United States, if this attendance means anything.
So why is that? Is it because the Canadian events have Tim Hortons donuts?
Yes, well, they do have Tim Hortons nearby. There's Tim Hortons everywhere in Canada. I can only speculate. I mean, I don't have a clear answer. The Canadian, the stereotype of comparing the average Canadian to the average American, the stereotype is that Canadians are more polite and more cautious, and so the caution thing might actually be reflected here. It might just be that there's a stronger interest in this in Canada because of the stereotype, because we're more cautious, because we're more concerned about doing the right thing, whatever the right thing is. But that's guesswork. Well, it's certainly an attractive proposition. It's Toronto's easy to get to, and the symposium is free. You get a lot of value for free. Can you talk about who's welcome there? I mean, clearly your mandate is Canadian critical infrastructure, but if our neighbors to the south would like to come by, or people from overseas, from Germany or India, to have a look at how are things done in Canada, are there lessons they can take away? Are those kinds of visitors welcome at this event as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I would say our primary focus is given priority to the members of the Canadian critical infrastructure. But again, as I mentioned before, I think we've all got a role to play in ICS security in general. We've talked about, and I'm certainly open for exploring more of a global view of how we do the work that we do. Again, there's my organization and there's the CISA organization to our south. But I mean, my assumption is that there are a number of similar organizations across the globe that are facing some of the same issues that we face as a community. I guess to circle back to the original question. Again, our focus is going to be on training the Canadian industrial base, but I'm certainly open to any and all suggestions on people who want to come and attend, and specifically people who can provide a more, I don't want to say non-Canadian, but a more global point of view on how they approach cybersecurity within their organization. And you know what? We've done this in the past. We've had, again, I know I pushed the Canadian content. We obviously have a very close relationship with our partners to the south, and we've had global speakers at some of our past events, and it's always well received.
So Robert mentioned there that non-Canadians can attend this event. What about non-ICS professionals like podcasters?
I would argue for a strong exception for you. But to the more general question, I've been to a number of the Canadian events, and we do see non-Canadians at the event routinely. So if our listeners would like to attend and get the Canadian perspective on cybersecurity, go to the website, put in your attendance request. Everyone has to request. Even me, I have to request attendance, and I get a confirmation afterwards. And if you would like to maybe throw something in for good measure, throw in a speaking proposal. If you're coming from abroad, talk about managing cybersecurity in a global organization. If you're responsible for multiple countries, if you are coming from a specific, part of the world, propose a speaking topic saying, here's what we're doing, and sort of give some background on what cybersecurity likes in another part of the, what cybersecurity is like in another part of the world. And this is certainly going to give your request to attend a higher priority. So, like I said, we do see non-Canadians there routinely. Clearly, this is a Canadian government organization. They have to have Canadians as a priority. But part of bringing Canadians up to date is an opportunity to mix with other people from other parts of the world and get some cross-fertilization going. So the symposium's, strategic to your directorate going forward. Can you talk about how it's been received? What kind of feedback are you getting?
It's a great question, and we take feedback fairly. We have a fairly good approach to it, I believe here. Again, we provide the assessment questionnaires during each of the conference sessions. After the training awareness sessions, we provide assessment surveys as well, and even after the webinars, we have assessment surveys. The whole idea is that how do we make the next offering of what we're doing better for the community? And I have to say, a lot of the initiatives that you see in place now and how we're developing and advancing some of these ideas, a lot of these came from some of the suggestions that we've taken in after each of the events. We hold what we like to call an after-action session. Immediately following each event, we table out everything that worked and didn't work, and we certainly throw a lot of new ideas on the board as well. We then take those, and honestly, if it's a good idea, we put it in action, and we try it out during the next event. I would say each event is better than the one before it because we have such an integration of feedback from the community and changing as we go how we offer each of these programs. Probably a good example of this is the format in which we deliver the symposium. Initially, it was a one-day event, and we just had session after session. What we found through feedback from the community is that they wanted to kind of modularize how we presented the information. So what we started doing, I believe 2 years ago, is we now have a more technical focused stream and a more strategic / management stream. And we found people could better organize their attendance, and if they traveled in tandem or with multiple people, they could send the right people into the stream to make sure they absorbed all the information that was there to absorb.
And I know you folks cooperate closely with the Department of Homeland Security and their initiatives. I mean, I see you at their events. I see them at your events. Can you talk about that cooperation? For example, I've heard speculation that one of these years we might see one of these events co-located. What kind of cooperation do you have going there?
Yeah, it's a great observation. Again, I think it goes without saying that we certainly work closely with our U.S. counterparts. DHS, ICS CERT, or in its current form of CISA, I would say they probably stand as the leader in a national approach to ICS engagement. Again, I know they've got a new name, but it's literally still the same great bunch of folks with the same advanced level of expertise in this project space. Like you said, we've been to their events, they've come to ours. We share a border, we share a lot of the similar infrastructure, so it goes to say that we have a close working relationship. A lot of our core business models were based on the ICS JWG approach to engagement, and our joint work, especially over the past couple of years, I think has only improved how we both deliver on our annual events. But you know what? I really like that idea of a joint ICS event. Again, our infrastructure is certainly similar enough. There would certainly be value for it. I know we've had some preliminary discussions, but nothing concrete as of yet as to when that would or could be. But I'd like to add here that certainly we've got a great relationship with the U.S., but we've also got some great relationship with some of our allied partners as well. There's the traditional partners such as the UK and Australia. We've had some great conversations and sharing initiatives with them. But we're also having some of those discussions with our European partners. Germany certainly stands out in that area. In the end, the infrastructure that powers our nations, it's at times different, but it's more times very similar. And I would say in any approach to a national approach to ICS security, there's certainly strength in numbers.
I've heard speculation about the possibility of someday there being a joint event between the DHS ICS JWG and Canada Public Safety's ICS Symposium, and the speculation would center on like a community on the border, like the Detroit-Windsor border, where it's kind of easy to say there's two sides to the community, to the partnership happening. But as Robert said, I've heard nothing concrete in that regard. But I think the idea has merit.
Yeah, I think the idea does have merit, and to have it on sort of the border would make sense. How would you have a similar joint event with, say, Australia?
Yeah, that would be a bigger challenge. So those are the 4 programs. Is there anything else you folks are doing? I mean, I'm familiar with the ICS CERT in the United States. They do risk assessments. They do incident response. They have flyaway teams. Are you involved in activities like this as well?
Specifically, we're not really in the business of doing advisories, and we don't have the capacity to do flyaway teams. Again, from an incident response point of view, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity is probably the best bet. But I think we do have another service that could be of interest to the community as well. I've talked about the ICS offerings, but one of the services that we provide is a very robust physical assessment package. This is an intensive multiple-day assessment where we evaluate the physical security posture of a client. This is a voluntary assessment, and if I had to sum it up, I would call it a guns, guards, and gates assessment of how a facility is laid out. This program is known as the Regional Resiliency Assessment Program, or RRAP for short, and it's a combination of physical inspection, geographical mapping of the area, and interview-focused questionnaires with members of our trained staff here. Now, that's the physical side. From a cyber point of view, this assessment is complemented by the Canadian Cyber Resiliency Review, or the CCRR. Again, it's another voluntary assessment program where we dive deeper into the cyber side of the operations. It's not what I would call a deep technical dive. For example, we don't go into mapping out, say, how your network is configured. It's more of an exploration as to the type of cybersecurity program an organization has in place. It covers areas like situational awareness, asset management, change management, various other domains that have their roots in the Nist Cybersecurity Framework. This is more of an interview-based assessment where we'll sit with key members of an organization and review their cybersecurity posture. Again, we've talked about the free offerings that we do. I'll add that both of these services are free of charge. Your only commitment is the time, with all the results and findings being the sole property of the client. Again, another great another great product that the department offers for the benefit of the community. If you want more information, the easiest way to find it is if you Google RRAP and public safety, you'll find the linkages into the team that's responsible for that.
He talked about the cyber risk assessment. I mean, he talked about the physical risk assessment as well. And I guess I'll second that. There is no such thing as cybersecurity unless there's physical security. If any random person can walk up to part of the plant and plug a laptop in and start doing stuff, you got to be able to prevent that. So physical reviews make perfect sense. He talked about the cyber reviews. He talked about them being sort of Nist Framework based. He talked about them, being sort of high level. It kind of makes sense. If you look at the Nist Framework, what is the framework? It's a checklist. It talks about 5 kinds of things that every security program has to have. They call them identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Identify is the program. It's the documentation. It's responsibilities. It's people assignments. It's inventory. You can't protect what you don't know you have. Protect is obviously the security controls, permissions, firewalls, gateways, physical separation, logical separation, usernames and passwords. Detect is monitoring. Respond is when the monitoring discovers something, you got to be able to get in there and do something about it. And recover is, okay, there was damage done, fix all that, get back online. Resilience, come back. So the sense I had from his description is that he's looking at that assessment, that level of assessment is looking at the entire program and asking, have you got the bases covered? Are there holes in the program where you've missed something? So it's again, it sounds useful. It's free, and it's very high level. They're not going to be going in there and opening your server cabinets and counting cables and poking at things. Thank you, Robert. We like to leave our guests with the last word. Is there a thought you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I kind of mentioned this before. Is I encourage people to find out what resources are available to help them with their cybersecurity awareness needs. Honestly, there are lots out there. I've mentioned the work of our partners, and I've spoken here today of what public safety and my teams bring to the table. But certainly with regards to industrial cybersecurity, we're probably one of your better contacts. But as I said at the beginning, we're just one spoke in a very large wheel. Our presence is certainly increasing. We're onlining a number of new programs that we're doing for the stakeholders. But again, it always amazes me when I go to one of our symposiums and when I ask that question, is this your first time here? It's evident to me we still have some work to do. For an event in Toronto in May, as I mentioned, we're aiming to have 300 people in attendance. This is going to be, I think, our biggest endeavor to date. Registration's open. We're accepting calls for professionals to come and share what they feel is important to the community. I think from a Canadian point of view, this is probably one of the de facto events in this area. We encourage you to come out, participate, and, get involved. I often hear talk about the coming issues related to ensuring that, we have the workforce of the future to keep these systems going. Personally, I have to say, it always makes me scratch my head. As a community, maybe more so for your audience as practitioners of the trade, I feel the work that we actually, with what we do collectively, it makes it different to the millions of people every day. Without the upkeep and protection of these systems, a nation just doesn't function. From the power in our grids, the water in our pipes, even the machines that can get us to where we need to go, without them, we'd certainly be in a hard state. For me, if that's not motivation to get involved, then I don't know what is. So I leave you with this. If you haven't done so, look us up on the web, get in touch with the team, and we'll get you connected to this ever-growing community. I want to thank you, Andrew, for taking the time, and for Waterfall for your continued support and promotion of what we do, because it's relationships like this where we continue to evolve and grow. Again, if you search for ICS and public safety, my team should be your first hit, and we're looking forward to seeing you and hopefully a few new faces in Toronto this May.
Andrew, how about a last word from you?
Well, I agree completely with Robert that this is work that needs doing, and I encourage everyone to check out the symposium. It's free of charge. It's great content in my experience, and to sort of second his instructions as to how to get connected. There's two ways to do it. Both of them mean going to his webpage. So go to Google, enter Public Safety Canada ICS Symposium. And when I do it, the top hit is his. You go to the website, scroll to the bottom of that web page, and there is a link on the bottom of the page that says "Contact Us." Click on that, send them an email, and get onto their announcements list. Alternately, if you can attend the Toronto event, just click on register for the Toronto event, and you will automatically be added to the mailing list. That's the mailing list where all the announcements comes out.
All right, now before we go, Andrew, we're introducing an entirely new segment of our podcast. Since the beginning, we've always wanted to hear from the folks who listen to this show because we know that many of you guys are yourselves established thinkers in the industry. And, now that our listenership has increased some in the past few months, we're starting an official listener mail segment.
Absolutely. So if you have comments on Robert's description of the free physical or cybersecurity assessments, the attack training sessions for building awareness, the annual symposium, please send them to me, andrew.ginter@waterfall-security.com. First name dot last at waterfall-security. Send them to me. If you've got questions that you'd like to follow up with Robert, send them to me. If I need to reach out to Robert and ask him the questions, I can do that. We'd love to hear from you, and get your take on things, and bring it to the next episode, and give people some insight into what you, the experts in the audience, are thinking.
And I just add that as somebody who's outside of the industry, there's no such thing as dumb questions here. If anything that Robert mentioned or that we or Andrew mentioned on the show confused you, feel free to send in your questions and we'll be happy to answer them.
And if I may add, Nate, don't sell yourself short. I have had feedback on the podcast generally at, conferences and such. The feedback has always been very positive about your participation. The kinds of interaction that your questions trigger are interactions that I've had people describe to me as a valuable part of the podcast. So again, if listeners want to ask anything, go for it.
That'll just about do it then. Thanks to Robert Pitcher for speaking with you, Andrew, and thank you, Andrew, for speaking with me.
Always a pleasure, Nate. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the Industrial Security Podcast. Thanks to everybody who's listening.